Well, hello, Shannon. Congratulations. It is just about to be pub day for the Lightyears Between Us. How are you feeling?
Yeah, very excited. I'm excited to see you've got a copy there actually. You've got a copy before I have. I'm still waiting on my
Uh,
proofs.
okay. We're recording this about a week or two before it's coming out. So
Yeah.
I guess I did get one of the first copies. I'm so excited for you. So before we jump in, will you tell us just your quick elevator pitch for the Lightyears Between Us?
Yeah, so Light Years Between Us is the story of two girls, Will and Paige, who are arch nemesis at school until they get locked on a spaceship together and fall in love.
Amazing. Like, what more do you need?
Yeah.
So will you tell us a little bit about yourself, and kind of what motivated you and kind of what brought you to this story?
Yeah, so I I always wanted to be a writer growing up. I started writing stories pretty much as soon as I could write. Um, I always really wanted to see my books in print. I think that was what inspired me when I was a kid. When when I would write a story I was proud of, I would take it to this family friend, and he would draw a front cover for it, and he would bind it together in a little book.
Oh,
And having those on a shelf really like lit
yeah.
the fire. And for what brought me to Light Years itself, so I wrote it in 2022, and that year I was reading tons of enemies to lovers, young adult stuff, but there was almost none of it that was sapphic, and it was all
Mhm.
fantasy. And I started thinking to myself, could I do something that was sapphic and sci-fi? And yeah, once I had that thought, things started ticking, and I came back to a story that's always really sort of stuck with me. There was a dog called Laika in the 50s who the Russians took her in off the street, just a little stray dog, and they put her in a spaceship that was not designed to re-enter the Earth's atmosphere. It was a one-way trip, and she was the first animal to orbit the Earth.
Yeah.
And that sort of image, that motif of that sort of that unwilling, unknowing sacrifice, that really always sort of stuck with me. And when I was thinking about enemies to lovers, sapphic sci-fi, I thought, what if there is a society that is built around this unwilling, unknowing sacrifice? What if it's something that's really codified and stratified into that world? And once I had that, I something clicked. I sat down, I wrote the
Yeah.
first 5 pages of Will and Paige sniping at each other in the classroom, and I was like, right, this is it, here we go. And everything else just spiraled out of that.
Amazing. You talked a little bit just now. What does the writing process look like? You talked about how that was the first couple pages came out, but do you start? Are you pantser, plotter? Like, what
Oh,
does your process look like?
yeah, on the pantser planner divide, I'm very much a pantser. I try to, usually I come up with like a one, like a one sentence concept, like enemies to lovers in space, and then I sit down and write just the first page. I just see what happens, I see what kind of character comes to me, and then once I've written like a chapter and I know who the characters are, the rest of the plot starts to fall in line. um Sometimes what I do, I find it easier to write like the big dramatic scenes, the things that act as like a lodestone for the narrative when something shifts inside the character. So I wrote some of Will and Page's arguments before I wrote much of the rest. I wrote the end pretty early on because I knew where I wanted them to go, and then for the rest, it's just sort of filling in the blanks and
Mhm.
getting those characters where you want them to go on that emotional journey. But yeah, very much a
Yeah.
pantser.
Amazing. And so you talked a little bit about it, but how did you kind of fall into writing? Is this something you've wanted to do since you were really, really little? And how did this kind of journey get to this point?
Yeah, so yeah, it was very much something I wanted to do since I was little. Right after I figured out I couldn't be Simba from The Lion King when I grew up, I thought, yeah, I'll be an author. That's pretty much the next best thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was we didn't have a TV when I was a kid, so it was all just reading. So I was a really fast reader. I read like a lot, and when you do a lot of something and you absorb a lot of things, I think it's natural for a child to want to try and produce that themselves. So I definitely started writing really young, and really bad stories, very bad. I've still got some of them that this family friend like bound up for me to pretend they were real books. But yeah, I've always really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Uh, Definitely
Yeah.
always wanted to be a writer. So this is an absolute dream come true.
Oh, good. And then what drew you specifically to Tiny Ghost Press?
Well, it was because they have such a good niche, right? They are an independent press that focuses on LGBTQIA young adults, and not just that, but specifically sci-fi and fantasy. And as soon as I found their website, I was like, "This is it. This is the one. What a
Yeah.
great fit. This is exactly what I write." And luckily, they felt the same way.
And we are all the more thankful for it. Um, and so what has this journey specifically with this book been from like when you first had that idea and you wrote those 5 pages to now, it's a published book and you will hopefully have copies in the next few in your hands soon.
Yeah, well, so from that day when I wrote the first 5 pages, it took me about 2 hours to write the first 5 pages, and then about 4 months later, I had a 150,000 word manuscript,
Wow.
which was a bit chunky. I sent it to Tiny Ghost Press, and they said we love it, but we need it to be 100,000 words. So I chopped out about 50,000, and was able to sort of work with them and polish it up. And I think probably the biggest change actually has been the title. When I first wrote it, it was called Like a 15 because
Mm,
the ship is almost like the third character in the book, right? First, the
mhm.
threat of the ship, and then its actual presence and confinement. So, yeah, that felt like a natural title to me at the start. But as the book evolved, I felt like Light Years Between Us is much more sort of descriptive and romantic,
Mhm.
and it sort of gives you a better impression of what the book's about.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so probably the biggest change from the book was originally the book was kind of like 3 sections long. There was academic rivalry, life on the Eden space station. There was the lottery process, where Will and Paige were doing all these competitions against each other to try and get less tickets in the lottery. And then there was life aboard the Leica 15. And when in cutting out a third of the book's length, it was that middle section that I took out. I kept everything good from it, but we did lose. Yeah, I spliced it all into other scenes,
Yeah.
but we did lose like some of those dramatic competitions and like academic debate contests and some sequences on the holodecks. So, that was fun stuff. It was very dramatic, very young adult, but I think the core of the story is stronger now.
You can always have that as little bonus content for people in
Yeah.
the future.
Yeah.
Um, and so, you talked about how your inspiration was this dog that was sent into space, but is there any other pieces of media or news or anything that really created inspiration for the creation of this book?
I mean, I think COVID played a big part, actually. Like I
Mm.
say, I wrote it in 2022 when
Mhm.
we were all fresh off of being in, what was it called? Isolation?
Lockdown, yeah,
That was it, lockdown. Yeah, we were all fresh off being in lockdown. It was just me and my partner for like 18 months,
yeah,
and like it was a lot more peaceful in our house than it was on like a 15. We're
right,
much less dramatic than Will and Paige.
yes.
But yeah, definitely that feeling of feeling the walls around you, that definitely played into the claustrophobic element of like a 15. I mean, Light Years Between Us, I was talking about the old title and now I'm calling it by the old title. Yeah,
Um,
so yeah,
yeah.
the lockdown definitely played into it.
Yeah. And there's also, with the lockdown and the you saying COVID kind of inspiration, there's a lot of themes within this, like identity, familial love, and human connection, which obviously we were missing a lot of at that time. Class, political intrigue, utopia, dystopia, and it's all kind of wrapped into a sci-fi story with some romance. So what was important to you about it kind of exploring all these different themes and piecing them
Yeah,
together?
so I think to me, young adult fiction as a genre is all about those big questions. When you're a teenager, it's such a transitional time. You're trying to work out uh, what you believe in, whether you want to support the status quo, whether you're against it, who you want to be with, who you want to be, full stop. And I think exploring those questions often through an extreme dystopic lens, can be really useful in young adult fiction,
Hmm.
because it gives those characters a chance to explore those feelings and to find themselves in the way that young readers are also trying to do at that point in their lives.
Hmm. Yeah.
And
I love
I think today, you know, politics is such a big part of who people are, in the sense that um, really basic things have become political now. You know, things like human rights, equality, wealth inequality, like human dignity. They're all now politicized. And I
that.
think in a romance story, which is, you know, at its core, romance story is two very different people trying to come together across whatever divides them, whether that's beliefs or whatever. I think weaving those in as part of that divide is a really interesting and relevant thing to do. So yeah, that definitely played into the story.
Mhm. Yeah. And will you talk a little bit about the Leica program and what it represents thematically in the book?
Yeah, so my sort of takeaway from the story of Leica the dog, um, the unwilling, unknowing sacrifice, has always been one of sort of beautiful futility, if that makes sense. You know, it was a beautiful sacrifice that paved the way for humans to go to the stars, but the dog never knew that,
Hmm.
and the dog never signed up for that. And I think that that theme of beautiful futility really sort of got to me for like for Light Years Between Us. It sort of it links to not only the Leica program and these doomed ships that get sent out never to return, but it also links to Will and Paige's relationship. You know, they spend all their lives struggling to break apart from each other, but they're not able to. They're locked in each other's orbit. They were sort of tied together before they ever got on the ship.
Hmm. I love that. And so then with the two of them kind of being locked with each other, you take in this story and you've balanced like this political intrigue with and class with the romance. And so how did you kind of find that balance? Because obviously for a romance you don't want to like lean too much into one the other, but also you want to keep it like interesting and exciting. And so how did you kind of balance the two things?
Yeah, well, so Light Years Between Us is a love story, but in terms of a character arc as Will for the main character, her arc is about uh, unlearning what she began as. You know, Will begins the book as quite an unpleasant person. She is incredibly focused on her relatively petty political problems. She doesn't see the inequality all around her unless Paige, who's her one window into this outside world, points it out to her via an insult.
Hmm.
And the book, in terms of a character arc for Will, is all about unlearning those biases, recognizing this crazy position of privilege that she's in, and trying to be better. Um, and for Paige, I think she has a less pronounced arc, but still the same. You know, Paige learns that though Will has been peddling nonsense in terms of all this uh, propaganda about the nobles, Paige learns that Will actually believes in that she's actually been trying to be the perfect noble in order to serve the people. And that's where they find their common ground. That even
Hmm.
though they were coming at it from these two crazy, disparate, different perspectives, in terms of their hearts, their personalities, they're actually very similar.
Yeah. And so the two main settings of the book are the Eden Station and the Leica 15. So they're both in space. Obviously, you know, we're in a sci-fi space novel. So do you have any favorite space opera stories, books, movies, anything that really kind of um, maybe was a seed of kind of wanting to explore this genre?
Yeah, I mean, it's very hard to pick. I think probably my favorite sci-fi novel ever is the word for world is forest by Ursula Le Guin, which is
Mm.
it's set on a planet rather than a spaceship, but it's really beautiful. It deals with colonialism, class inequality, dreams and what they mean. It's really beautifully written. It's really short. It makes me cry every time I read it. So yeah, highly recommend that one.
Yeah.
And there's another one, quite an old one, by Anne McCaffrey called The Ship Who Sang. And that's quite similar. That was probably an inspiration for Light Years Between Us, actually. It's
Hmm.
about sort of the loneliness of space, those themes of, you know, beautiful futility, sacrifice, wanting to be loved. So yeah, The Ship Who Sang is also another very good one.
Yeah. And in the book, Will deals with strict expectations from her family, her noble family specifically, while navigating a world where her every move is watched and kind of turned into a political capital, making her go so far as to doom herself on the Leica program. So, what was important for you that to explore Will going so far for the sake of politics and the path that it sets her on?
Yeah, so Will's main sort of personality trait, her main flaw, is that she's incredibly driven and focused. At the start of the book, she begins with two sort of main obsessions in life. One is politics, and one is Paige. At the start of the book, that takes the form of really wanting her dad to be first minister and really trying to beat Paige in school. And then by the end of the book, it's sort of flipped those two orders of importance. She still cares about politics. She still cares about changing things on the Eden, but now it's Paige that's in front. And I think her character arc is her priorities change, but her personality doesn't at its core. She's still very driven, very hyper focused. It's just that her choices change, and I think yeah, the politics side of it is Will learning to make better choices. Yeah, I think I've lost the thread on that one.
Yeah, that's okay. No, you totally answered the question.
Yeah.
Um, and one of Paige's fathers is a well-known and respected governor in Spoke Six. But the difference between her family and Will's noble family is this wealth and status. And so, why was this distinction of the disparity of levels of the system so important to you?
Yeah, so I wanted I wanted to talk a bit about wealth inequality in the book, I think. You know, in the last 20 or 30 years, wealth inequality has gone up massively in the real world. And I was sort of thinking about what would it be like if that was embedded within a really small, sealed off society like a space station. What kind of effect would that have if it were really stratified within the system there? And that was what led me to come up with the idea of the nobles, these sort of hereditary, not quite kings, but essentially kings that rule each spoke of the wheel that is makes up the space station. I wanted Will and Paige to be coming at it from really different perspectives. Will is so rich she almost is on another space station to everyone else, another planet. Um, you know, Paige's dad is a minister, but he got there through personal hard work and talent, whereas Will's dad, Xavier, got there because he was born to it, just like Will. So I wanted the two girls' backgrounds to be reflective of their personalities, sort of mirror images. You know, Paige's family has worked hard to get where they are. Will's family was born to it, and that's part of the reason why I wanted such intense wealth inequality, just to explore that theme.
Yeah. And with the kind of dichotomy between the two of them, um, you know, Paige is views Eden as kind of this flawed dystopia, but Will kind of views is often out of touch and with reality that a lot of her classmates live in. So why would did you want to specifically explore that dichotomy between the couple and where that kind of takes them in their relationship?
Yeah, well, like I say, I wanted them to begin as very much opposites in terms of their wishes and their backgrounds, while their personalities were actually quite similar. And so I think it's a big part of the story. You know, Will's coming at it from such an insane position of power and privilege, and her character arc is all about her learning to deconstruct that.
So the novel is set in space and features aspects of space travel and academia in great detail. And so, what kind of research did you go into working on these worlds that are set in space?
Oh my god, so much research. It's a lot more work to write a sci-fi novel than it is a fantasy novel, I've got to say. In my fantasy novels, I'm just like, that's how the world works, there
Right.
just is a giant river there, or the meteors just fall in that way. That's the way it is in that world. In a
Mhm.
sci-fi novel where it's got to be grounded, and you've got to at least try and make it real and feasible, it takes a lot more research and a lot more work. So when I was writing this, I had like a giant map on my wall with all the maps of Jupiter so that Will could refer to them casually. I spent like hours of research on every little thing, so that even if it's just for a line or two of dialogue, so that Will or whoever is mentioning it can sound like they know what they're talking about. I had to be able to understand it. So like when I was writing the glider race scene, I spent like 3 hours reading about maglev and how that technology works. And in the scene where Will teaches Paige Latin declensions, I had to buy a Latin textbook and try and teach myself a really basic first lesson in Latin so that Will could sound convincing. So I think that's a real challenge of writing a character who is clever. You've got to write them as believably clever.
Right. Um, and are any of the characters, based on people that exist in the real world or people that you know?
um, Not really. I think my characters tend to come from my imagination mostly. I mean, when you write such deep and introspective point of view stories like this one is, naturally some of yourself bleeds through into your character. Um, I mean, I'm not like Will. Will's very mean, but there's definitely bits of her personality. I mean, bits of my personality in her, and the same for Paige. Like different aspects of me in both of them. Um, and some of the characters uh, were based on tropes, but mostly the other characters are just they're there to serve that particular narrative need. But Will and Paige are the most fleshed out characters, and they're just out my head.
Yes. Yeah. And if you were trapped on a spaceship with one person, who would it be and why?
Oh, it would definitely be my partner. Like I
Mhm.
said, we basically did that in COVID, and
Right.
he's he's a lot. We're a lot less dramatic between us than Will and Paige are. So I feel like it would be
Uh-huh.
a lot calmer than being on like a
Yeah.
15.
Fair. That's totally accurate. Totally fair.
Well, if you were trapped on a spaceship with someone, Jacob, who would you be trapped with?
Oh, I would also probably be trapped with my husband,
Nice.
and all of our, hopefully all of our books.
Yes.
Yes. And so what is one thing that you hope readers will take away from the light years between us?
I hope that they enjoy the characters. Will is not a particularly nice person at the start, and I hope that readers can enjoy her perspective and find it interesting even before she becomes a better person. And I hope that they enjoy seeing that arc, because I really enjoyed writing it. I think that redemption arcs can be really interesting to read about, and they're definitely really interesting to write about. I think the other thing I hope the readers enjoy is the background details. Like I say, I put loads of research into this book, and I had a lot of fun coming up with little things. Like there's a movie series that Will and Paige get into called Ruination of Yesterday, which is a parody of Lord of the Rings and similar things. It's about an elf and orc who fall in love, and I spent ages writing out all these ridiculous titles for all of the 9 films in the series and coming up with little plot summaries for each one. So I hope the readers
Mhm.
enjoy, the little background things like that.
Yeah. And is similarly, is there anything you hope readers fall in love with?
I hope they fall in love with the love story. I hope they
Yeah.
can root for Will and Paige. I hope they can enjoy the setting of the Eden. And sci-fi is often quite hard and cold and clinical in the setting, but I'm a very flowery writer, and so I tried to find sort of the beauty in the setting, and I hope that they enjoy sort of the scenery as well.
Yeah. And so now that the light years between us is in the hands of readers, what is kind of in next for you in terms of writing? Is there more in this world? Is there other worlds you're working on?
I definitely have more ideas for a sequel for Will and Page, so that could be coming. My next project is I've got another book coming out in 6 months' time. It's sapphic adult fantasy with Orbit. It's about gay carnivorous mermaids. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing that on shelves too.
Amazing. Um, is there any more you want to tell us that you can tell us about that?
Yeah, so it's called Endless Blue Beneath, and it's there's going to be a duology in that. So that'll be coming out in June next year, and then a sequel June the next in 2027 after that.
Amazing. That's exciting. I
Yeah.
love gay mermaids.
Yes.
And so finally, can you describe the light years between us in just 3 words?
Oh, that is hard. Okay. Rivals has got to be one of them because they are rivals. There's a lot of gay yearning in there. So rivals, yearning, spaceships.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Shannon, for chatting with us today about the light years between us. Now, where can people find you on social media if they want to find you and support you?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram and Blue Sky and Twitter. Not that I go on Twitter much anymore. As Skengly, which is Skengli. So I'm just that on all platforms. So yeah, look me up and give me a follow.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much. Congratulations again. And I hope everyone enjoys the light years between us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.